Canada has a problem, and that problem is it is not a safe place for minorities. That is, the minorities within the minority. The newest example of this is Karima Baloch, who was murdered in Toronto and drowned in the lake. Now, I will say murdered, and I will put murder in the title, even though the police have ruled this a suicide. This is infuriating for a lot of reasons. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush and say likely murdered or blah, blah, blah. No. It's time to call a spade a spade. This was not a suicide, okay? It's the same thing with the Iranian flight being shot down. Same thing, right? Flight 752. I was able to break the story. The National Telegraph did. I talked to a military expert. All you had to do is know how that missile system works, and it becomes a near 0% chance that it was accidental. Same thing with Karima Baloch, okay? There is a precedent for this type of thing happening to dissidents of Pakistan. Last April, I believe, Sajid Hussain, another Baloch activist who's advocating for the rights of his people outside of Pakistan, was drowned in Sweden. So there is a pattern to the way the ISI murders people internationally. The same way that we would never call it a suicide if someone was really critical of Vladimir Putin, goes somewhere else in the world and then is dead by a mysterious, highly toxic, untraceable poison. What could have happened? Vladimir Putin killed him, right? Just like, Karima Baloch died. How did this happen? The ISI. They did it. Now, there's a problem here. Okay, so the cops have ruled this immediately a suicide, and the CTV and the mainstream media just jumped on it. There actually is a very good article from the Toronto Sun. They're the only ones sort of not jumping on this, asking legitimate questions. Warmington, Tariq Fatah has been amazing. I know he was very close with Karima, so Tariq, if you're listening, sorry for your loss. I didn't know her. It wasn't like Mehdi Amin a couple months ago, but this infuriates me as a Canadian because we try to pride ourselves as a place that welcomes human rights and stands up for what is good and just. And to the large extent we are. But with the new left, the problem with the new left is it does not protect minorities within the minority, as I said. So in Canada, we have 35 million Canadians. There's over 100 million Pakistani people in the world. But the Pakistani people are a minority. Fine, don't be racist towards Pakistani people. We can get behind that. But the problem is that Pakistan's a huge country, and there are ethnic conflicts within Pakistan, the biggest one of those being the occupation of Balochistan. Pakistan and China are just murdering people there. So Karima Baloch had to come here, flee for her safety. She's happy here. She sets up a life. She's continuing the fight for the rights of her people. She's getting death threats. Then she ends up drowned in the lake, dying in the same way that other Baloch activists have died internationally. And the Toronto police say suicide. And the media comes and says, sure, nothing criminal happened here. This is why I'm not going to say, allegedly suicide, or blah, 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 blah. Like, listen, I'm an opinion journalist at best, okay? It is my opinion that it is a 99.9% chance that this was a murder. And it's a 99.99999999999999999 chance that the ISI is behind it. Or someone affiliated with them. So the problem is, are the Toronto police really, 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 really stupid? Are they really, really stupid? That could be one of the things. They just didn't do their homework and said, we couldn't find anything, suicide. And then the husband's like, no, we've been receiving death threats. And she wasn't suicidal. It's not a suicide. She was receiving death threats. And this has happened in places in the world. Or are they corrupt? Because we do know that the Pakistani ISI has spent a lot of money infiltrating the Canadian political system before. So they could be bribing the cops, or they could be bribing politicians, right? And then politicians could have put political pressure on the Toronto police to say, hey, close this case. Don't look too further into it. They could have got a call from like Navdeep Bains, Harjit Sajjan, Amarjeet Soji. All of them could be working on behalf of Pakistan as Khalistani operatives. Sama Tulajan, Iqra Khalid. Any one of these people could have been like, Pakistan first, Canada 15th, or whatever it is, and put pressure on that. So do we have a corruption problem, from financial money here, or is it an incompetence problem? Either ones are big, big, big problems. Here's what's going to keep happening. So Canada is a great place to murder dissidents. If you're an authoritarian regime and your dissidents flee to Canada, it's a great place to have them murdered, because we now live in a Canadian society, not under Stephen Harper, now under Justin Trudeau, where we protect minorities. And we just dichotomize this variable, right? everything we have, it's like the white people and you have POCs. And that's the only variable, right? So you have white people in this case, or Canadians, and then you have minorities. And every minority must be protected. The problem is, not every minority likes every other minority, right? India and Pakistan, both of them are technically not minorities because they have 100 million people. But in Canada, we'd say, yo, an Indian person and a Pakistani person, they're minorities. You guys might be aware that India and Pakistan are not friends, which means they have conflict. Then you're getting the Baloch, which are a minority within Pakistan, are being oppressed by them. So they come here, right? Pakistanis will just murder these Baloch activists because they know that, one, they can probably, bribe their way out of it, incompetent, like Canada won't do anything. Because, and if we do something, if we start to stand up for human rights, all the Pakistanis know they need to do is say racism, Islamophobia. And then 90% of the media will back down. Even though Baloch is also Muslim, these are two different Muslim, it's a conflict of Muslims within Muslims, so Islam isn't really anything to do with this. But you get the point. It drives me crazy because, this is the death of what Canada always stood for. Canada always stood for, human rights values and protecting the innocent. And, warriors for peace was our tradition. But this new left is destroying our society, and it's making it unsafe for the very people we claim to be protecting. So while we claim to be protecting minorities, what we're actually doing is setting up prime conditions where authoritarian regimes know the Canadians don't do anything. So we're going to shoot that down that plane full of Canadians. Make sure no Americans are on it, because if we kill Americans, Donald Trump will make sure it's the last thing we do with our lives. Whereas if we kill Canadians, Justin Trudeau will probably send us $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. Who knows how many billions of dollars will be wired to Pakistan because of this. Odds are it'll be a lot more than you think. So it's absolutely tragic. We must find who's responsible. We have to kick out all these ISI and Pakistani generals sitting here, seize their assets. They're such a cultural and security threat to us. We cannot have these extremists and human rights abusers, and you can't have them here. We can't be a safe haven for the worst people in the world and an absolute danger to human rights activists. This woman was so happy to be here. She stood up against the niqab for women's rights, broke barriers as being a self-made woman in Pakistan, in the most oppressive province there. And she comes here to set up a life, and she gets murdered, and our friggin' media and our police is like, suspiciously drowned in a lake, just like other Baloch activists across the world. Suicide. It's not a suicide. She was so obviously murdered, and the cops who declared this a suicide and the media members who jumped on the bag in there should be ashamed of themselves. Rest in peace.